Namaste. Welcome to the Hindu Dharma Basics and Beyond podcast, a podcast that gives you authentic knowledge covering broad topics on Hinduism, the ancient Vedic wisdom. This podcast is based on the book by the same name by Pujya Swami Viditatmananda Saraswati, one of the most respected scholars and teachers of Advaita Vedanta today. This episode answers the following questions. Is Bhagavad Gita a scripture? What is the context of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita? What is Arjuna's role in the Bhagavad Gita? Why is the Bhagavad Gita so appealing? What is the cause of sorrow according to the Bhagavad Gita? What is Karma Yoga? Even after understanding and accepting that everything around us happens as Ishvara's infallible law, why is it difficult to accept certain life events as the grace of the Lord? Let's begin. Is Bhagavad Gita a scripture? What is the context of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita? Yes, Bhagavad Gita is a Hindu scripture, perhaps the best known Hindu scripture. It is the teaching imparted by Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna sits there in the midst of both armies, grieving at the prospect of the death of his near and dear ones. This grief makes him lose all motivation to fight the battle. He justifies to Lord Krishna why the battle should not be fought. He lays down his weapons and tells Lord Krishna that he will not fight against his near and dear ones, including his teachers. He refuses to fight even though he knows that the battle is meant to protect Dharma, and also that as a Kshatriya it is his duty to fight. Thus, there is a conflict between duty on the one hand and attachment on the other. This conflict intensifies his grief. However, even in that state of mind, Arjuna gains the insight that it is not just a given situation, but something more fundamental, which is the cause of human grief. So he surrenders to Lord Krishna and asks the Lord to teach him what can help him gain the ultimate good and achieve complete freedom from sadness. This is the context of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. What is Arjuna's role in the Bhagavad Gita? Arjuna is the seeker of knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita. He surrenders to Lord Krishna and in his helplessness seeks knowledge and guidance. Therefore, he becomes an instrument for Lord Krishna to impart this teaching, which is considered to be the essence of Hindu Dharma. Arjuna represents one who has lived a life of dharma and struggled and fought in life and yet achieved great things. There was no reason for Arjuna's grief as far as his material accomplishments were concerned. His grief was on account of the conflict in his mind. The Bhagavad Gita provides a solution to grief, which is the fundamental human predicament. Why is the Bhagavad Gita so appealing? The Bhagavad Gita is so appealing and applicable because it addresses the basic human problems of grief, sadness, bondage, and a feeling of limitation. The human being is constantly striving to become free from these emotions. Lord Krishna teaches us how to break free from grief, how to own up our true nature, which is wholeness. Owning up our true nature gives us freedom from bondage and the feeling of being limited. What is the cause of sorrow according to the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita explains that ignorance about our true nature results in misconceptions about ourselves, which further leads to a variety of false notions and complexes. These false notions and complexes are the primary cause of all our grief or sadness. Lord Krishna addresses two important misconceptions that we human beings entertain about ourselves. One is that we are mortal beings, and two, that we are doers, which means we perform actions. The first misconception, that we are mortal beings, is because we think that the physical body alone is the self. Therefore, the birth, death, etc. of the body is taken to belong to the self. Death, or even the thought of death, either of oneself or of one's near and dear ones, becomes a cause of grief. Lord Krishna reveals a fundamental truth about the real nature of the self in chapter 2. In verse 20, he says, "Na jayate mriyate va kadachit, nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyaha, ajo nitya shashvato yam puranaha, na hanyate hanyamane sharire." The self is never born, nor does it die. It is unborn, eternal, everlasting, and ancient. Even though the body is slain, the self is not. In verse 23, Krishna says, "Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyaapaha, na shoshayati marutaha." Weapons cannot cut it, nor can fire burn it. Water cannot wet it, nor can wind dry it. In verse number 13 of chapter 2, Krishna says, "Dehinosmin yatha dehe, kaumaram yauvanam jara, tatha dehantara praptihi, dhirastatra na muhyati." Just as boyhood, youth, and old age belong to the body, but are attributed to the self, even so the attainment of another body. The wise man does not get deluded about this. Gata suna gata sumscha nanushocanti panditaha. The wise do not grieve over the dead or the living. Lord Krishna teaches that when the self is truly known for what it is, there is no occasion for grief. The second notion that causes grief is the sense of doership, which makes us believe that we are the enjoyer or experiencer. As a doer, we feel guilt, and as an experiencer, we feel hurt. Hurt and guilt are themselves major causes of sorrow. Lord Krishna reveals, "Ya enam veti hantaram, yaschainam manyate hatam, ubhau tau na vijanitaha, nayam hanti na hanyate." He who takes the self to be an agent of the act of killing, as in taking the self to be the doer, and he who takes the self to be killed, taking the self to be an experiencer, both are ignorant, because the self neither kills nor is it killed. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enamajam avyayam katham sapurushav partha kam ghatayati hantikam. Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna that how can a person who knows the self to be imperishable, eternal, and free from birth and decay be the cause for someone to be killed? And how and whom will he kill? The act of killing and the experience of being killed are representative of all actions and experiences. If it is known that the self neither performs any action nor gets affected by someone else's action, there will be no more hurt or guilt. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna teaches how we can make our lives a process of growth and maturity, so that the mind becomes prepared for this knowledge and one gains the ultimate goal of freedom from bondage, freedom from sorrow, and freedom from the sense of limitation. What is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga means performing all actions in the spirit of worshipping the Lord, which is the attitude of yajna. The attitude of yajna is the reaching out and offering of oneself unto Ishvara, the cosmic whole. Through the attitude of yajna, one becomes free from small mindedness, self centeredness, fears, and insecurities. The attitude of self offering enables us to discover satisfaction and joy within ourselves. It is a process of self purification where the impurity is nothing but self centeredness arising from a sense of insecurity caused by ignorance. We can invoke the inner richness, which is the nature of the self, by not validating the insecurity. Instead, we deliberately adopt the attitude of self offering, which is based on security. This process of performing actions is conducive to discovering inner strength. In the truest spirit of Karma Yoga, we perform all actions with a sense of duty and responsibility, recognizing that we are members of the whole universe and we enjoy the benefit of what the universe offers to us. Therefore, we appreciate this and perform our actions with a spirit of gratitude. The whole universe functions around the concept of yajna, self offering. Every element of nature offers itself to the totality. The Bhagavad Gita acknowledges this truth and teaches us to adopt the spirit of offering to the totality, which is nothing but God or Ishvara. Thus, the Gita teaches us to perform all actions as an offering unto the whole, which is Ishvara, and know that the outcome of the actions comes from the laws of the universe. These laws are Ishvara's laws. There is an infallible order here. And since the results of action come from the laws of Ishvara, we may gracefully accept the outcome as Prasada, the grace of the Lord. This is possible only when there is devotion to Ishvara. True devotion takes place when one understands the nature of Ishvara. Even after understanding and accepting that everything around us happens as Ishvara's infallible law, why is it difficult to accept certain life events as prasada, the grace of the Lord? To accept all experiences, all events, and all feelings as Ishvara's prasada requires self growth. Self-growth helps a person with discrimination to discern that what one is seeking in life is within oneself. Only such a person has a value for performing actions as an offering to the Lord and accepting the results as prasada, the grace of the Lord. That person's mind is centered on the Lord while performing all actions and receiving the result. Therefore, the life of a karma yogi becomes a constant remembrance of the Lord. That is how he or she gets connected to the Lord. In other words, a karma yogi performs every action as an offering to the Lord and accepts all outcomes as prasada. Offering every action to the Lord ensures that he remains steadfast on the path of dharma. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm Swami Viditatmananda, a Hindu monk and teacher of Vedanta, the Vedic wisdom that liberates. Do write to me at hindudharmabasics@gmail.com if you have any questions about what was shared in this episode. I thank Dr. Savitri Ramaya, a dear friend, who puts the final valuable editing touches on these podcast episodes. In our next episode, we will see what the Gita reveals about the nature of God or Ishvara. If we have time, we will look at the content of the chapters of Gita briefly and several other aspects of the Bhagavad Gita. We end with a prayer, Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Satyameva Jayate. Truth alone conquers.